On a quiet 24th of December morning in 2002, Modesto, California was alive with the holiday spirit. Christmas lights twinkled in the early dawn, and homes were filled with the warmth of the season. But for one family, this festive day would soon turn out into a chilling nightmare. This story is about Laci Peterson. A 27-year-old expectant mother was up early tending to the final preparations for Christmas. The day was significant not only because of the upcoming festivities, but also because Laci was just weeks away from giving birth to her first child. A son she and her husband Scott had already lovingly named Connor. Laci was known for her warmth and vibrant personality. She had grown up in Modesto, the daughter of Sharon and Dennis Rocha, and was deeply cherished by her family and friends. She had met Scott Peterson while both were students in California Polytechnic State University. Scott was studying agricultural business, had a certain charm that quickly captivated Laci. The two fell in love and married in 1997, appearing to be the perfect couple, with Scott working as a successful fertilizer salesman and Laci working as a substitute teacher. The Petersons' life in Modesto seemed idyllic, filled with the promise of a bright future, especially with the impending arrival of their first son. On that fateful Christmas Eve, Laci's day started like any other. She planned to take the golden retriever Mackenzie for a walk into the neighborhood park, something she did on a regular basis. However, as the day wore on, the routine was shattered by an unsettling turn of events. Scott Peterson, who had left home that morning to go fishing at the Berkeley Marina on San Francisco Bay, returned to a scene that was disturbingly out of place. Laci was nowhere to be found. Her car, a Land Rover, was still parked in the driveway, and Mackenzie was found wandering the neighborhood with his leash still attached, but there was no sign of Laci. The house was eerily quiet, with the festive decorations and holiday preparations untouched, as if they were all frozen in time. Initially, Scott appeared confused and concerned, making the phone calls to family members to see if anyone had heard from Laci. As the hours passed with no word from her, Scott's concern escalated into panic, and he finally made the decision to call the police at around 5:17 p.m. In his call, he explained that his wife, who was 7.5 months pregnant, had gone missing. When the police arrived at the Peterson home, they conducted a preliminary search, but there were no immediate signs of foul play. Laci's purse was in the house, as were her keys and other personal items, indicating that she had not planned to leave for an extended period of time. The police quickly initiated a search, fearing the worst given Laci's condition and circumstances. As the hours turned into days, the search for Laci's intensified. The Modesto community rallied together, combing through parks, fields, and even rivers, hoping to find any sign of the missing woman. Flyers with Laci's smiling face were plastered on every street corner, and news for her disappearance quickly spread beyond California, capturing the attention of the entire country. But as the search continued, the media spotlight shifted. The focus was no longer solely on finding Laci, but on her husband Scott. His behavior during this time was peculiar. While the world watched with bated breath, Scott appeared on television pleading for Laci's safe return. Yet something was off. His calm demeanor, his lack of visible emotion, he almost detached composure. Those elements struck many as unnerving. How could a man whose wife and unborn child were missing remain so disturbingly composed? As whispers of doubt began to circulate, investigators started to dig deeper into Scott's life, and what they found only deepened the shadows surrounding him. His story about fishing on the day Laci vanished seemed riddled with inconsistencies. What time had he left? When did he return? Witnesses placed him near the bay earlier than he claimed, further fueling suspicions on what the actual story was. Then, in a twist that shocked the nation, it was revealed that Scott had been leading a double life. In January 2003, a woman named Amber Frey came forward, confessing to having an affair with Scott Peterson. She had been unaware that Scott was married, let alone that his wife was missing. Amber's relationship painted a damning picture. Scott had told her he was single and that he had lost his wife, referring to Laci in the past tense before she had even disappeared. As Amber's story unfolded, she provided a recording of phone conversations with Scott where he continued to lie about his situation. These tapes were like daggers at the heart of his defense, suggesting a chilling motive behind Laci's disappearance. Furthermore, it was revealed Scott Peterson's affair with Amber Frey wasn't his first. According to reports, Scott had been unfaithful multiple times throughout his marriage to Laci, indicating a pattern of deceit that painted a picture of a man capable of living a double life. This revelation shocked those who knew the couple and added another layer to the motive behind the murder. Scott's ability to compartmentalize his life, playing the role of a loving husband while simultaneously pursuing extramarital affairs, suggested a level of cold calculation that made the case even more chilling. The case against Scott Peterson was building, but it was the discovery that was made on April 13th, 2003 that would turn this tragic tale into one of the most harrowing criminal cases in recent memory. In the murky waters of San Francisco Bay, about 90 miles from Modesto, two fishermen stumbled upon a sight that would haunt them forever. The first body they found was a small, fragile, a full-term unborn baby, later identified as Connor Peterson. He was wrapped in a way that indicated he had been submerged for some time. But the horror didn't end there. Later that day, a second body was discovered, this one partially decomposed. It was Laci Peterson. Her once vibrant life brutally extinguished, her body discarded like debris. The discovery of Laci's and Connor's bodies near the very spot where Scott claimed he had been fishing was more than just a coincidence. It was a damning piece of evidence. Forensic examinations revealed that Laci had been strangled, and the state of the bodies suggested that they had been in the water for months, consistent with the timeline of Laci's disappearance. Further analysis indicated that both bodies had been weighted down before being thrown into the bay, a grisly detail that pointed directly to Scott's access to a boat and his knowledge of the area. As the trial loomed, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. The nation was hooked, unable to look away from the unfolding drama. Scott Peterson, once a seemingly ordinary husband, was now painted as a cold-blooded killer who had meticulously planned the murder of his wife and unborn child. The prosecution presented a compelling narrative, weaving together the forensic evidence, the inconsistencies in Scott's alibi, and his extramarital affair to suggest that he had murdered Laci to free himself from the responsibilities of marriage and impending fatherhood. The defense, led by the renowned attorney Mark Geragos, fought back with all they had, arguing that Scott was a victim of media hysteria and circumstantial evidence. They claimed that the investigation was flawed, that Scott's strange behavior was not indicative of a guilt, but rather of a man overwhelmed by the pressure of public scrutiny. They pointed out that no direct evidence linked Scott to the murders. No fingerprints, no blood, no murder weapon. But the court of public opinion had already turned against Scott, and the jury was left to sift through the mountain of evidence and decide his fate. On November 12th, 2004, after months of grueling testimony and heart-wrenching evidence, the jury delivered their verdict. Scott Peterson was found guilty of first-degree murder for the death of Laci Peterson and second-degree murder for the death of Connor Peterson. The nation exhaled a collective breath it had been holding for nearly 2 years. The sentencing phase followed, and on February 21st, 2005, Scott Peterson was sentenced to death by lethal injection. He was sent to San Quentin State Prison, where he joined the ranks of death row inmates, awaiting the ultimate punishment for his crimes. The story didn't end there. In a twist befitting this tragic saga, the legal battles continued. Scott's defense team tirelessly pursued appeals, arguing that the trial had been marred by errors and that Scott had been unfairly convicted. Their efforts culminated in a significant development in 2020 when the California Supreme Court overturned Scott's death sentence, citing errors in jury selection. The ruling didn't overturn his conviction, but it meant that Scott Peterson would face a new sentencing trial, reopening the wounds of a case that had never fully healed. As of 2024, Scott Peterson remains incarcerated, his fate still hanging in the balance as his legal team battles to clear his name, while the prosecution fights to uphold the conviction. The case of Laci Peterson, a young mother-to-be whose life was cruelly taken just as it was the beginning, remains one of the most haunting and complex criminal cases in American history. It's a story that refuses to fade, a chilling reminder of how quickly life can turn from joyous to tragic, and how in the quest for justice, the truth is often as murky as the waters of San Francisco Bay. The Peterson and Rocha families were forever changed by Laci's murder. Sharon Rocha, Laci's mother, became a vocal advocate for victims' rights, even writing a book about her experience for Laci, a mother's story of love, loss, and justice. The Peterson family, while initially supporting of Scott, faced intense scrutiny and public backlash. Over the years, the family's dynamics have been strained, with different members dealing with the tragedy of Scott's conviction in their own ways. The Laci Peterson case had a significant impact on American culture and the legal system. It highlighted the role of the media in high-profile cases and the potential for public opinion to influence legal proceedings. The case also brought the attention to issues such as the death penalty and the rights of the unborn. Was considered a victim of second degree in the psychological profiles of individuals who commit such heinous crimes. It continues to be referred in discussions about media ethics, criminal justice, and the death penalty. Even after 2 decades, Laci Peterson's case still remains a subject of public fascination. It has been the focus of numerous documentaries, true crime shows, books, and podcasts, each offering different perspectives on the case. The ongoing legal battles and the possibility of new developments keep the story alive in the public mind, ensuring that it remains one of the most talked about criminal cases in American history.